Good morning, Paul and Bhargav. It's Friday, the 30th of June. Here's the heads up brief for today. For the Southeast Asia production, we covered 19 issues. In North Asia, we covered 5, and for Australasia and the Pacific Islands, we covered 11. In South Asia, we covered 16 issues, plus the major issues in Europe, Middle East, and Africa.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Right. In Papua New Guinea, Police Commissioner David Manning said that under the amendments to the Criminal Code, um, incidents such as kidnapping, tribal violence, organized crime, and others will be considered as domestic terrorism. This is as he pushes for greater powers to tackle the rising insecurity in the country.
Look, I'd normally be very concerned by this, and certainly in life after Manning, this could become a real problem. But right now, it's a necessity. But it's a necessity because of lack of government control, lack of government commitment, lack of government professionalism in managing their security requirements, and dumping everything on Manning. And unfortunately, not all the people that are going to fulfill his role heading the police in the future are going to have his capabilities and integrity, and it could become inadvertently a very bad progression. But right now, for the security paradigm, this is a good thing.
Right. In the Philippines, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front has called for the government to bring back the international monitoring team to assist with the peace process in Mindanao. This comes after tensions between the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and security forces. There was controversy over a recent incident in which the military said it had killed some terrorists, but the Moro Islamic Liberation Front said that its personnel were targeted.
Okay, thank you.
In Thailand, the Secretary General of the Election Commission said that its probe into the Move Forward Party leader Pita is nearly complete ahead of the July 3rd deadline. Meanwhile, the House Speaker vote is expected to be held on the 4th of July. It must be held within 10 days of Parliament's reopening, which is expected on the 3rd of July.
Yeah, it's pretty ironic or coincidental that the probe's going to finish the day immediately prior to the Speaker votes. So I think a plan's in place. Let's just see if that unfolds how we expect it to.
Yeah, sure. We'll keep a close eye on it. And in Timor-Leste, the new government will be sworn in tomorrow.
Yeah, look, and this is a great thing. Obviously, there's a big event happening at the palace there on Saturday. So some of the travel's going to be disrupted. VIPs being escorted to and from the palace. So Saturday and Sunday will not be a good time to be driving around the roads with all the escorts going on. But this is a great thing for Timor-Leste. Yet another peaceful election, this time electing a much more powerful leadership team and a progressively minded team that can hopefully get Timor-Leste back on the road. It's been in a quagmire for a few years as misguided academics and nationalists within the government successfully ran the country's oil and gas funded down, whilst concurrently and absurdly preventing new gas resources and oil resources from being tapped. So the foreign investors, of course, have become very shy. Whilst there is a history of some untoward actions by the Australian government, that became an excuse for the previous government to do nothing. And in the absence of having a plan, they elected to ponder on and do not much. But with Horder as president, Junana Goods, our prime ministership, CNRT and PD having a majority and both having a progressive mindset and possessing a lot more wisdom and capability, this is a wonderful, wonderful progress for the fledgling nation. Thank you.
Great. In South Asia and India, there are indications that the government could table a bill to implement a uniform civil code during the parliament session scheduled for next month. This is a controversial piece of legislation that would mandate a common set of laws for marriage, divorce, inheritance, and adoption for all citizens, irrespective of religious and communal differences. This also comes ahead of the 2024 elections.
Yes, this is unfortunately indicative of the bad and very self-defeating tendency of Indian governments, wherein they focus on these divisive issues which will gain them political momentum, but they forget to focus on what's actually important for the economy or for the overall development of the country. For example, the infrastructure in India is in tatters. Medical facilities or the overall healthcare infrastructure is nothing to boast about, especially after the pandemic. But what they want to do is focus on issues which may be important in the periphery, but they want to bring it to the fore and gain political mileage using issues like Uniform Civil Code. Earlier, it was a Farm Bill. Before that, it was the NRC and CAA Bill on citizenship. To give a bit of context on Uniform Civil Code, under Indian secular constitution, there are parallel laws governing the Hindu community and the large minority, that is Muslim community, wherein the Muslims are governed by the Sharia law and accommodate some of the practices such as polygamy. And as far as the legal theory goes, it may be a positive development towards a secular nation where everybody is treated equivalent, but that doesn't really address the critical issues what the country is facing. And UCC, or Uniform Civil Code, may not have a direct impact on businesses, but it is indicative of the level of governance or how ineffective and inefficient the government is, or rather misdirected.
Right.
Well said, Bhargav. And I think we have to also alert our clients that this is really blind Hindu nationalism for political popularity. And I think you've put it very eloquently, Bhargav, that it's all about political popularity. It is ignoring critical things, and they're doing something so that certain people, backed by some of the West, have secured control over the Indian media, so that a few rich politicians and rich oligopolies can make their rich politicians even richer. Western media, backed by the West, are also picking up on that populist Hindu propaganda that hides all the real issues that are being ignored. Infrastructure is obviously the key one. I guess I will often ponder, how long can the rich elite keep the poor, when you're talking over 1 billion people? How long can they keep them both fooled and quiet, Bhargav?
Paul, I would say this is a matter of political mileage. As long as the ruling party has that political mandate, this will continue. And in 2024, there is no strong opposition. The moment a major scam hits the government, there is likely to be cracks in their support base at the ground level. I do hope, the optimistic side in me hopes that this is a matter of cyclical phase. In the 90s, it was largely the centrist coalition government. Before that, it was leftist government. So similarly, I hope this is a cyclical phase. But unfortunately, the current indicators show that the right wing is going stronger at the central or a federal level, but not at the state level.
Thank you.
Right. And moving over to Europe, in Paris, in France, nationwide protests against police brutality continued for the third day yesterday. They've spread outside of Paris. Demonstrations were concentrated in major cities, including Marseille, Lyon, Toulouse, Bordeaux, and Lille. And violence was recorded at protests, with protesters burning police cars and barricading roads.
This is very much indicative of the nature of protests, whether it may be a police shooting or it may be pension bill in France. The policies can be quite divisive, and in this specific case, it is also indicative of the social fissures which are quite apparent, especially in southern France and in some of the bigger cities like Paris, where there is a clear discrimination being made between the white French and the immigrants from North Africa and other parts of Africa. So hopefully this will be controlled in the short term without letting this go out of hand by the French authorities.
Uday, can you please also just start to construct impact by city. What has been burnt, how widespread is the violence geographically. We need to just get a better picture on what the impacts are, both for giving immediate feedback to the clients to that effect, but also they've got a major event coming up later this year. You'll have to check the dates, but I think September, October in the Rugby World Cup. So it really does give people wanting to get attention an ideal opportunity. I think after the Olympics and the Soccer World Cup, it's the biggest global sporting event. So that just date of its size, it becomes vulnerable, and that, of course, can have a spill-on effect to our clients. So if you could just get the team over the next couple of days, certainly by midweek next week, to really define what the impacts are, okay?
Yeah, sure, we'll do that, Paul. We'll keep a close
Thanks.
eye. Yeah. And lastly, Russian authorities have apparently informed the head of the Wagner Group that Wagner Group fighters will no longer participate in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. This is after the head of the Wagner Group refused to sign contracts approving the fighters to operate under the command of the Russian Ministry of Defense.
That's interesting. We need to see how this will have an impact on the command and control mechanism at the ground level in Ukraine. There must be quite a bit of troops left behind in Ukraine, which were part of the Wagner Group. Will they be withdrawn immediately, or will they be absorbed? And now that absorption is very much in question, now the contracts are being denied. So we'll have to keep a close eye on this.
Look, and I think it's a very complex issue, Bhargav and Uday, because there's many factors that are not being extrapolated by the so-called Western experts. The Western experts really hung up on their cliches, waves of humanity being full waves of soldiers, and if we kill Putin, everything will be peaceful. The reality is what waits behind the cloak if Putin dies is a lot more tyrannical, hardcore people. In fact, internally, Putin's seen to be a little bit weak and indecisive. There can be no doubting the fact that Wagner fulfilled an incredible role in terms of sieging key cities. As hardcore as the leader is, that's now exiled in Belarus, he's obviously offered incredible leadership to the field level tactical operational soldiers. The reality is those same sort of hardcore, predominantly ex-criminal soldiers, they're not going to react to standard Russian senior NCOs and officers. They're going to actually see them as incapable in the field. And so this whole concept of absorbing them is a concern. What can't be hidden is that they've lost a massive capability, the hardcore, the nail getting hit by the hammer. Wagner was the nail that was driving into the Ukrainian defences. Of course, you've also got the other issue the West is blowing up, that Putin came out of this looking weaker. I'd argue quite the opposite. He was able to put Wagner back in his place without bloodshed, without being seen to be fighting against troops that had done an incredible job for Russia. I think he handled it very well. And he obviously had, everyone talks about Wagner elected to do a U-turn. I'd suggest there were some pretty clear discussions coming out of Moscow that helped that U-turn decision occur. So I think we really need to make sure that all our analysts are getting on the China, Russian, and Middle East media sites that aren't pro-America or blindly following the American and Western media. The European Union, NATO, America, and the Five Eyes are all pumping the same expertise, which is manifesting it off very poor assessment and some very poor, in fact, wrong assumptions. Key one of that is who started the war. They don't seem to have bothered to actually research that key factor, and they haven't actually also researched who's behind Putin if he was to lose power. Assuming that's a good thing is folly of the grandest scale. So I just want to make sure that all our analysts, you have a team meeting, make sure they're all continuing to take all the Western media, but also continue to communicate with people that do have a greater degree of expertise than wanting to be heard. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have a meeting on that.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Cheers.
That's a brief for today. Anything else from you?
No, mate. Thanks.